What if I told you that the modern-day Israel you see on the map may not be the same Israel the Bible talks about? What if everything you thought you knew about Israel was only part of the story? Most people, including many Christians, believe that the modern state of Israel, founded in 1948, is the direct continuation of the Israel we read about in the Bible. They see it as the fulfillment of God's ancient promises to Abraham and his descendants, and therefore many believe they must support it unconditionally. But what if I told you that the Israel on the map today isn't necessarily the same as the Israel God talked about in the Bible? Here's a fact that may surprise you. The modern state of Israel is largely secular. It's driven by political forces and nationalistic ideologies, and many of its leaders do not follow God as their forefathers once did. And yet, Christians around the world stand by Israel with a kind of blind allegiance, convinced that supporting this nation is the same as standing with God's plan. This isn't just about geography. This is about spiritual identity, and the differences between the biblical Israel and the modern nation are far deeper than you may realize. The truth is that God's promise to Abraham was not just about a physical land. It was about a covenant relationship. And today, while many in Israel claim the inheritance of Abraham, the question remains, are they living in alignment with the covenant God established? Is it right for Christians to support everything modern Israel does, regardless of their actions? The answers may not be comfortable, but they're necessary. To understand the present, we must first go back to the beginning, to the story of Abraham in the Old Testament. In Genesis 15:18-21, God promised Abraham a specific land for his descendants. This land, known as Canaan, spans modern-day Israel, but also parts of Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. It was a broad territory, much larger than the borders of the current state of Israel. However, there's a key point to understand. The land was tied to a covenant. It wasn't just a territory for the sake of territory. It was a land where God's people were to live in obedience to him. This land, Israel, was meant to reflect God's relationship with his people. It was never just about real estate. It was about spiritual alignment.
The term Israelites conjures images of an ancient people with a rich history, deeply rooted in religious traditions and enduring struggles. The Israelites are a group of people whose history is closely intertwined with that of the Jewish people. The origins of the Israelites can be traced back to the ancient Near East, particularly in the region that is now modern-day Israel and Palestine. To understand who the Israelites are, we must first explore their early history. This history begins around 2000 BCE, and it is rooted in the story of a patriarch named Abraham. According to the Hebrew Bible, God made a covenant with Abraham, promising him a land for his descendants. This covenant is seen as the beginning of the Israelite people. Abraham's grandson, Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, fathered 12 sons, each of whom became the head of a tribe. These 12 tribes, commonly referred to as the 12 tribes of Israel, played a fundamental role in the early history of the Israelites. Over time, they grew in number and established themselves as a distinct group with a shared ancestry, traditions, and beliefs. One of the most significant events in Israelite history is the Exodus, which is dated around 1200 BCE. The story of the Exodus is detailed in the Hebrew Bible, particularly in the book of Exodus. According to the biblical account, the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt for several generations. Their liberation is attributed to Moses, a key figure in Israelite history. Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt through miraculous events and received the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai, which served as the basis for their religious and ethical code. The Exodus marked the beginning of the Israelites' journey to the Promised Land, a journey that would take them through the desert for 40 years. This Promised Land was the territory promised to Abraham by God. It is the land that would later become the heartland of Israel. including regions such as Canaan and Jerusalem. The Israelites eventually settled in the region of Canaan, establishing themselves as a people with a distinct cultural and religious identity. The biblical accounts of this period are found in the books of Joshua and Judges. Canaan was inhabited by various indigenous peoples, including the Canaanites, but the Israelites gradually gained control of the land. The Israelites were organized into a confederation of tribes, each with its own territory, leader, and traditions. The leadership of the Israelites shifted from tribal judges to kings, with Saul, David, and Solomon being some of the most notable monarchs in Israelite history. King David is particularly celebrated for establishing Jerusalem as the capital of the kingdom and laying the foundation for the construction of the First Temple. The construction of the First Temple, also known as Solomon's Temple, marked a pivotal moment in Israelite history. It became the central place of worship and a symbol of their religious identity. The Israelites' faith was centered on monotheism, the belief in one God, and the temple served as a place for sacrifices and rituals. The religious texts and traditions of the Israelites would later form the basis of what is now known as Judaism. The First Temple was a grand structure and an essential aspect of Israelite culture and identity. However, it was destroyed in 587 BCE by the Babylonians, led by King Nebuchadnezzar. This event, known as the Babylonian captivity, marked a traumatic period in Israelite history, with many of the Israelites being exiled to Babylon. After the Babylonian captivity, a group of Israelites returned to their homeland under the decree of Cyrus the Great, who had conquered Babylon. The returnees sought to rebuild their religious and cultural life, including the construction of the Second Temple. The Second Temple, completed in 515 BCE, became the focal point of Jewish religious practices and identity. During this period, the Israelites faced various challenges, including the influence of Hellenistic culture and the oppression under the Seleucid Empire. The Maccabean Revolt, led by Judah Maccabee and his brothers, played a significant role in preserving Jewish religious and cultural identity against these external pressures. This period also saw the development of the Jewish canon, including the Hebrew Bible, which contains the foundational texts of the Jewish faith. Over the centuries, the Israelites experienced a series of conquests and occupations by foreign powers, including the Romans. In 70 CE, the Romans destroyed the Second Temple, leading to the dispersion of the Jewish people, a period known as the Jewish diaspora. This dispersion resulted in Jewish communities forming throughout the world, from Europe to Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. During this time, the term Jew began to be used more commonly to refer to the people of Israel, while the broader concept of the Israelites became deeply intertwined with Jewish identity. The Jewish people continued to maintain their religious and cultural traditions, despite being scattered across the globe.
That, by the way, brings up a question that students sometimes ask about the various names we use for the people of God, such as Hebrews, Israelites, and Jews. What's the difference between these terms? Today we use them basically as synonyms, but they do have different origins and somewhat different meanings. The name Semitic, referring to the Semitic peoples, comes from the word Shem. The descendants of Noah's son Shem were Shemites or Semites. The Semitic people include the Jews, Arabs, and other people groups, especially from the Middle East. The word Hebrew probably comes from the name Eber, who was one of Abraham's descendants. The word Israelite comes from the name Israel, of course, and you might recall that Israel was another name for Jacob, Abraham's grandson. The 12 sons of Jacob, or Israel, were the sons of Israel, or the Israelites. The word Jew narrows the group a bit further. Jew comes from the name Judah, and Judah was one of Jacob's 12 sons. The tribe of Judah was the dominant tribe of the southern tribes of Israel. So the names originally narrowed the genealogy. Semitic is the largest category, the descendants of Shem. That narrows to Hebrews, the descendants of Eber. That narrows to Israelites, the descendants of Jacob or Israel. And that narrows even further to Jews, members of the tribe of Judah.
The question of who is Jewish comes with high stakes when it's defined by others. Certain nations choosing who to oppress, Israel deciding who gets to immigrate, and even just from individual communities that aren't welcoming to some. So, is Jewish identity something you decide for yourself, or is it decided for you? There's an old joke. Anyone who's less religious than me, well, they're not really Jewish. And anyone who's more religious than me, well, they're just crazy. There's always someone on your left and on your right. So what ties us together? And how do those opposing ideas shape Jewish lives, both in the past and in the present? What connects a Hasid in Williamsburg to a Tel Aviv beach bum? Rabbi David Wolpe likens Jews to a religious family. Essentially, you're born into a family the same way you are born into Judaism. For some, this happens at birth. For others, it happens by choice. And the family you're a part of shapes who you are and the choices you make. Whether you're Ashkenazi, Mizrahi, Sephardi, Beta Israel, Bukhara, Italkim, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, Reconstructionist, Renewal, or Humanistic, they all identify as Jewish. And that Jewish identity is tied to all sorts of things: traditions, rituals, values, language, and even food. That Hasid in Williamsburg strictly observes the Sabbath. The women light the candles to welcome it in, reciting prayers and sitting down for a meal with no phones to distract. The guy in Tel Aviv caps off his busy week relaxing with family over a Friday night meal too. Only no Kiddush prayer and a soccer game on TV in the background. Both spend Friday night differently, but what's influencing each is the same exact thing: a sense of Jewish identity. But historically, having a complete freedom of choice to decide your own Jewish identity was not 100% up to you. For many, it was defined by sovereign nations, and a nation calling someone Jewish, regardless of how that person labeled themselves, meant that the person would share the same fate as other Jews. Most famously, if you had a single Jewish grandparent, the Nazis came after you. When Israel was created in 1948, it was formed to be a home for all Jews. But who are we talking about when we say all Jews? When the lines are drawn on who is and isn't a Jew, there's always consequences. In 1950, the law of return was passed, stating every Jew has the right to come into this country as an olet, or immigrant. But no clear definition of who is a Jew was established. Halacha was generally held as the standard, namely Jews of matrilineal descent or through Orthodox conversion. But some Jews, depending on how you define Jewish, didn't qualify, either because of who converted them or who their parents were. They weren't considered Jewish enough to immigrate. The law's lack of clarity sowed polarization in Israeli society, prompting battles in the Israeli Supreme Court over who is a Jew and multiple amendments. In 1970, the version that we know today was ratified. It extended immigration rights to anyone with a single Jewish grandparent, forming a refuge for anyone who would have potentially been a target of the Nazis. And there was, of course, backlash to this too, along the lines of, are we letting Hitler define our definition of who is Jewish? The result? After the walls came down, over 1 million Jews from Soviet Jewry, whose Jewish identity had been suppressed by the Soviet Union, were now eligible to emigrate to Israel. But in many countries today and throughout history, being considered or not considered a Jew mattered a whole lot. Historically, whether we're talking about the Spanish Inquisition, pogroms in Russia, Nazi Germany, anti-Semitism in the Arab states, or the KKK in the US, it could mean the difference between equal rights and second-class citizenship, or between life and death. Today, many of us are lucky enough to live in places where we don't have to think twice about our Jewish identity. We can simply be. The greatest happiness in life, Theodor Herzl said, is to be that which one is. For centuries, mechanisms like politics and strict interpretations of Jewish law shaped how people had their Jewish identity assigned to them. If you're in a situation where you get to define it for yourself, you shouldn't take it for granted. That freedom allows people to do Jewish in their own way, with a sense of agency. For those who decide to make it a crucial part of their life, it connects them to something deeper, what Rabbi Jonathan Sacks called being a letter in the greater scroll that is the Jewish people. Drawing a line on who precisely is and isn't Jewish is not easy. It's not an exact science. If this is something that's a part of yourself, it's good to understand what that means, how it plays into who you are and where you come from. Thinking about Jewish identity goes beyond having a few conversations. It's making an active choice to experience Judaism, whether on trips, through events, or even taking part in discussions on topics like this. Each person's own sense of Jewish identity is both what keeps our people growing from generation to generation and what allows so many to access the fullness, the richness of Judaism. It's the experiences we have, chosen both by and for us, that make us who we are. Jewish identity has meant many things throughout history and the world. Truly finding what it means to each of us requires experiencing it in as many ways and places as possible. After all, the very act of searching is at the heart of Judaism itself.
The modern state of Israel, founded in 1948, came into existence after World War II, largely through international political agreements and the Zionist movement. While many Jews returned to the land, seeing it as the fulfillment of prophecy, others argue that the modern state of Israel is a secular nation, a far cry from the theocratic nation that God envisioned in the Old Testament. So does today's Israel fulfill the promise God made to Abraham. It's not as clear-cut as it seems. While the geography may overlap, the spiritual purpose of Israel in the Bible was tied to obedience and covenant. The modern state is political, secular, and often driven by nationalism, not biblical devotion. Another turning point in the biblical story comes with Jacob, the grandson of Abraham. In Genesis 32:28, God changes Jacob's name to Israel after Jacob wrestles with an angel. The name means he who struggles with God, and it's from Jacob that the 12 tribes of Israel descend. But here's the critical question. When God changed Jacob's name to Israel, was he referring to a physical territory, or was he creating a people, a spiritual lineage? The Bible suggests that Israel isn't just a nation-state, but a people chosen by God. In Exodus 19:5-6, God tells Moses, "Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Israel was to be a holy nation, a people in relationship with God. Therefore, the name Israel was less about land and more about the covenant people of God. The land was a gift, yes, but the real significance of Israel was their relationship with God. So, while the modern state of Israel might occupy the land, the question remains, are they living as the covenant people of God? That's what truly defined biblical Israel, and it's what we must consider when comparing the ancient nation with today's state. To understand the creation of modern Israel, you need to understand Zionism. Zionism is a political movement that emerged in the late 19th century, advocating for the creation of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. This movement gained momentum due to anti-Semitism in Europe and the persecution of Jews throughout history. But here's something that's often misunderstood. Zionism wasn't always religious. Many early Zionists were secular Jews who were more focused on the cultural and political identity of the Jewish people than on their spiritual covenant with God. Theodor Herzl, the father of modern Zionism, envisioned a secular state where Jews could live freely, away from the oppression they faced in Europe. This brings us to today. The modern state of Israel is largely controlled by secular political leaders. While there are religious factions within Israel, the nation's government and much of its population are not driven by Torah-based principles. Instead, they focus on national security, political power, and maintaining their sovereignty in a volatile region. So, when we ask who controls Israel today, we must acknowledge that Zionism and its political goals are a significant driving force. This raises another important question for Christians. Are we supporting a biblical Israel or a political Israel?
Zionism.
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 A political movement, an ideology, or an ethno-nationalist vision based on supremacy. To understand it, we go back to 1897, the birth of Zionism. Before Israel existed, a group of European Jews gathered to develop a vision that would change history.
Zionism is a movement that started around 150 years ago That's just really recently, relatively recently. And it's a movement of people who were totally estranged from the Jewish religion. They weren't practicing the religion as a whole.
The founder of Zionists, his name was Theodor Herzl from Vienna, Austria. He don't believe in God, he don't believe in nothing. The Judaism is completely a religious movement, have nothing to do with any nationality, with any materialistic thing.
Zionism was different. It was a political and nationalist movement that used historical Jewish narratives and biblical mythologies as well as anti-Semitism to justify colonization and create a Jewish state in Palestine at any cost.
They realized in order to get a lot of massive support from the world, evangelistic Christians, Jews who don't know the Torah, don't know their laws, who don't practice the laws, so they knew they'll go to Palestine and they'll be able to tell everybody, oh, this is the God-given land to the Jewish people. They automatically started breaching and transgressing the laws of the Torah, not to kill and not to steal, not to oppress a people, because they wanted to make their national home in a land that was inhabited by the Palestinian people.
From the start, Zionism necessitated killing, stealing, and oppressing, actions that go against core Jewish teachings.
They declared themselves a Jewish state, and if anybody stood up against them, they said because you hate the Jews and you're an anti-Semite.
When the ideology was put into action beginning in the late 19th century, Palestinians were killed and violently displaced, and Jewish settlers seized their land and replaced them. There was no coexistence, only ethnic cleansing and control.
The Zionist movement and Israeli government being nothing but a settler colonial imperialist system that is trying to replace us with Jewish immigrants from outside, to kick us out of our country, to conduct ethnic cleansing.
In Zionism, total victory means no Palestinians and no resistance to colonization, land theft, Jewish supremacy, and total cultural erasure.
What is total victory? In the framework of Zionism, total victory is ethnic cleansing. It's the completion of the genocidal process that began in 1948, which can deliver them an ethno-religiously pure state free from these indigenous contaminants.
It starts early in classrooms. History rewritten, symbols saluted, indoctrination over education.
And then when you get to high school, you start literally learning how to be a soldier already with the age of 16. Once you finish high school, you're supposed to quite immediately, as soon as possible, with 18, go to the army. It's obligatory. I don't even remember using the words Palestinians in school. Arabs was there, and they're always some kind of in a context of being our enemies, where I would say that the word closely to Palestinians, we have the word, so in the Bible it says Plishtim. So these were also our enemies. And then I think the connection that I would make as a kid, when I started hearing the word Palestinians, I connected it, the connotation was to these Plishtim from the Bible, who were our enemies. So you learn specifically about the heritage of Judaism, but it's all Zionism actually. That's another thing as an adult, that I had to relearn Judaism when I came out of Israel.
Today in Palestine's Gaza, the Zionist ideology is manifesting its most natural state, one of extreme, lawless brutality. Palestinians are being murdered, starved, and stripped of every basic right.
There is a genocide. They have killed 18,000 children. They have declared a full closure. Over the closure, no food, no water, no electricity, no fuel, with a determination to punish the Palestinian people, to target the Palestinian people. This might lead to creating the conditions of life that would be physical and biological destruction for Palestinians.
On each gurney was 3 to 5 kids, almost exclusively kids. 90% of our new admissions were kids. And there'd be 15, 20 kids coming in at the end of every bombing. A third were dead by the time they got to us.
I'm sorry.
A third would die in front of us. And a third we'd take to the operating room. And most of them would die. No kid gets shot twice by mistake by a sniper. It doesn't happen by mistake. They were deliberately targeted. And that's not beyond a war crime, that's targeted assassinations. And it helps me formulate my opinion of what's really occurring in Gaza.
How is this genocidal system flourishing? Billions in US aid, year after year.
I think there's not only an effort within the military and our government institutions, but it's an effort by the media, by our executive branch, legislative branch. I mean, even local state governments. I think every institution at this point has a level of corruption that keeps us censored to the truth and reality of what's actually happening. Fox News, CNN, even MSNBC, all of these news organizations have been censoring the truth.
Netanyahu hasn't been condemned by the American government. The American government hasn't sanctioned Netanyahu. In fact, they have doubled down.
One telephone call can stop all wars. Israel cannot thrive without American taxpayer paid for bombs. That's all it would take.
Meanwhile, 1.25 million Palestinians face catastrophic hunger in Gaza. Aid remains blocked. Families are starving.
This dictatorship, they really have no limits. And if they could, they would starve all the Palestinians to death. And actually what they tried to do for 20 months, they destroyed all the aid system, they destroyed the water sewage system, they destroyed all the capacity of the Palestinian people to remain alive in that region.
Over in Palestine's occupied West Bank, apartheid defines daily life.
I don't have any right, in the contrary of the Israeli settlers who live close to my house illegally. They have more rights than me in my own neighborhood. They are under the Israeli civilian law with full civilian rights and political rights. And we, the Palestinians who are living, in our land, we don't have any rights. Basic rights we don't have. We don't have enough water, enough electricity.
But Palestinians refuse to leave. Staying is resisting. Resistance against a system that silences and suppresses an entire people.
Palestinians are staying and remaining because for us, it's about that remaining in the land is a kind of resistance. And we call it all the time, existence is resistance.
We mobilize to stop the genocide. We mobilize to defeat Zionism, to defeat imperialism, to create a better society for every human being and every being on this planet. It's our task to do so.
The Zionists ignoring everything about the Jewish belief. In the Jewish belief, the state of Israel will come to an end 100%.
Many Christians believe they must support the modern state of Israel unconditionally because of verses like Genesis 12:3, where God says to Abraham, "I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse." This verse is often interpreted to mean that blessing Israel, in whatever form it takes, brings God's favor. But should Christians support every action taken by the Israeli government, regardless of whether it aligns with God's word? The reality is that the modern state of Israel is often involved in military actions, political conflicts, and policies that may not reflect biblical principles. For instance, the Palestinian conflict raises ethical and moral questions about human rights, land occupation, and justice. While it's important to pray for Israel and acknowledge its biblical significance, Christians should also remember that God's heart is for justice, peace, and righteousness. Supporting Israel does not mean turning a blind eye to actions that go against these values. Jesus himself said in Matthew 5:9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." As Christians, our role is to seek God's will, not to support any nation unconditionally, but to advocate for justice and truth in all things. Another pressing question: is modern Israel under constant threat from its neighbors, or is Israel itself a threat to the stability of the Middle East? Historically, Israel has been involved in multiple wars since its creation in 1948, including conflicts with Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt. Israel is surrounded by nations that have, at various times, sought its destruction, such as Iran, which has openly called for the annihilation of Israel. At the same time, Israel's military actions, such as the occupation of the West Bank and the blockade of Gaza, have led to accusations that Israel is destabilizing the region and contributing to the suffering of Palestinian civilians. The truth is, Israel is both under threat and a regional power. The conflict is complex, and as Christians, we must look beyond political narratives and seek God's wisdom in understanding the situation. Our goal should always be to pray for peace and justice for all people in the region, not to take a one-sided political stance.
Behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in a day I took them by their hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, says the Lord. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. No more shall there every man teach his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, says the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity and their sin, and I will remember no more. Jeremiah 31, verse 31 to 34. For I will take you from among the nations, gather you out of all countries, and bring you into your own land. Then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean, and I will cleanse you from all your filthiness and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart, and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh, and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will keep my judgments, and do them. Then you shall dwell in a land that I gave to your fathers. You shall be my people, and I will be your God. Ezekiel 36, verse 24 to 28. We are eagerly waiting for the Lord to gather Israel out of all the countries and bring them into their land. This will be the Lord's doing, not man or politics. This is the future promise.